Most people are leaking their power right now, and they have no idea it is happening. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. Fail. Not through a single catastrophic event or a visible wound. It is quieter than that. Far quieter. It leaks through the conversation you did not want to have. Fail. But had anyway. It leaks through the scroll that was supposed to last 2 minutes and swallowed 40. It leaks through the obligation you never chose. Fail. But somehow inherited. The social performance you rehearse without even realizing you are rehearsing. Fail. The constant low-grade hum of availability that modern life has convinced you is just normal. And here is what makes this so difficult to see. Fail. None of it looks dangerous. None of it looks like a problem. It looks productive. It looks social. It looks responsible. Fail. It looks like what everyone else is doing. Which is precisely why almost no one questions it. You do not question what the whole world seems to agree on. Fail. You just participate. You just keep going. Fail. You just keep giving pieces of yourself away in increments so small that you barely register the loss until one morning you wake up and something essential feels missing. Not gone exactly, but buried, distant, like a signal you used to receive clearly that now comes through wrapped in static. And that morning, fail. That specific morning when you notice the missing, you might try to explain it away. You might tell yourself you are tired, that you need a vacation. Fail. That things will settle down once this project ends, or this season passes, or this particular storm clears. But somewhere beneath the explanation, fail. Somewhere in the part of you that has never been fooled by your own rationalizations, you know it is not tiredness. You know it is not circumstantial. Fail. You know that something deeper has been quietly eroding. Fail. And you know that no vacation and no change of scenery is going to restore what has been given away piece by piece over months and years of unconscious availability. Fail. That signal is your power, not power in the way the world typically defines it. Not status, not influence. Fail. Not the ability to dominate a room or command attention. The power I am talking about is something far more fundamental. Fail. It is the ability to remain undisturbed by what does not matter. It is the capacity to hold your own center when everything around you is pulling, demanding, performing, reacting. It is the quiet, fail, almost invisible strength that comes from knowing who you are deeply enough that the noise of the world cannot rename you. Fail. This kind of power does not announce itself. It does not need to. You feel it in people who carry it, not because they perform it. Fail. But because it radiates from the quality of their stillness. From the unhurried way they move through decisions. Fail. From the ease with which they say no to what does not serve them, and yes to what does. From the way their presence in a room shifts the room. Fail. Not through force, not through volume, but through the sheer coherence of a being who is not at war with themselves. That coherence is what you feel. Fail. That coherence is what you are missing when the leaks have been open too long. Fail. And that coherence is exactly what becomes possible when you finally stop giving your power away. And the people who figured this out, fail. The ones who stumbled into this understanding or were dragged into it by circumstance, they all did something that looked strange from the outside. Fail. They went quiet. They pulled back. They stopped performing. They simplified. And everything in their reality began to shift. Fail. Not because they found some secret technique, not because they unlocked a hidden formula. Fail. But because they stopped hemorrhaging the very energy that builds a life from the inside out. Let that land for a moment. Fail. What if the exhaustion you feel is not about how much you are doing? Fail. What if it is about how much of what you are doing was never yours to carry in the first place? Fail. There is a pattern that shows up in almost every life that begins to transform, and it rarely looks the way you would expect. Fail. It does not start with a grand awakening or a mystical experience or a sudden download of clarity. It starts with a subtraction. Something falls away. Fail. A relationship ends. A habit breaks. A commitment, and in that space where something used to be, a strange new quality enters. Not emptiness exactly, fail. More like room. Room to hear yourself think. Room to feel what you actually feel instead of what you have been performing, fail. Room for something real to grow in soil that was previously occupied by everything artificial. Notice what that subtraction feels like in your body right now, fail. Just as a concept. Notice whether there is a part of you that contracts against it, that immediately begins generating reasons why you cannot release anything, fail. Why everything currently demanding your energy is somehow essential and non-negotiable. That contraction is the programming speaking, fail. That tightness is the conditioned self defending the very patterns that are depleting you. And the fact that you can notice it, fail. You can feel it as a sensation rather than simply obeying it as a command, means you are already beginning to step outside of it, fail. Already beginning to see it rather than simply be it. This is what the ancient traditions understood and what modern culture has almost entirely forgotten, fail. Your attention is not just a cognitive resource, it is the creative substance of your reality. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. Where your energy flows, your world forms. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics. The quantum field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you consistently observe. It responds to where you place the weight of your awareness. Day after day, moment after moment, fail, choice after choice. So when your attention is scattered across 100 shallow commitments, fail. When your energy is distributed among people and situations that do not actually nourish you, fail. When your nervous system is perpetually activated by stimulation that has nothing to do with your actual life, fail. What kind of reality do you think you are building? What kind of signal are you sending into the field that organizes your experience? Fail. A scattered signal creates a scattered life. A fragmented frequency produces fragmented results. Fail. And no amount of affirmation or visualization or positive thinking can override the fundamental pattern of where your energy actually goes every single day. Fail. This is the part that most people miss. They try to manifest from the surface while leaking power from the foundation. Fail. They try to create a new reality while still fully plugged into every pattern that built the old one. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Fail. Why the same cycles repeat. Why the breakthroughs never quite land. Why they feel like they are running on a treadmill disguised as a spiritual path. Fail. The answer is almost always the same. The energy is not available. It is already spoken for. It is already committed to maintenance, to performance. Fail. To obligation, to distraction, to the 1,000 small yeses that were never really yeses at all, but were just the absence of a clear no. Fail. Think about that for a moment. A yes that you never consciously chose. A yes that came from discomfort rather than desire. Fail. A yes that came from the fear of what someone might think or feel or say if you said no. Those yeses are not generosity. They are not kindness. They are energy expenditures made under duress, and they accumulate in the body as a kind of invisible debt. A debt that gets paid not in money, fail, but in vitality, in clarity, in the slow erosion of your capacity to be fully present in your own life. Here is something that might feel uncomfortable, fail, but carries a freedom inside it that could change the way you move through the rest of your life. Fail. You do not owe your energy to anyone or anything that did not help create who you are becoming. Read that again inside yourself. Feel the weight of it. Feel where it meets resistance. That resistance is the very programming that keeps the leaks open. The guilt, the obligation, fail. The fear of being seen as selfish or cold or unavailable, fail. The deep, almost primal terror of what might happen if you actually prioritized your own becoming over everyone else's comfort, fail. But here is what no one tells you. The people who protect their energy completely are not selfish, fail. They are the most genuinely generous people you will ever meet. Because they give from fullness, not from depletion. They show up from presence, fail. Not from obligation. Their yes means something because their no means something, fail. and the people around them can feel the difference, even if they cannot name it. There is a solidity there, a warmth that does not waver, fail. A kind of attention that actually lands because it is not being split among 40 other things simultaneously, fail. There is a difference between giving from overflow and giving from debt. When you give from overflow, fail. When your energy is gathered and full and genuinely available, the giving itself is nourishing. It does not cost you. It expresses you, fail. It moves through you the way music moves through an instrument, without depleting the instrument, without diminishing what it is. But when you give from debt, fail. When you give from a place that is already empty, what you are actually offering is not presence. It is the performance of presence, fail. And people feel that difference even when they cannot articulate it. They receive the performance and somewhere in them they know it is not real, fail. And that knowing creates a subtle hollowness in the exchange that neither of you can quite explain, but both of you feel, fail. Think about the last time someone gave you their full, undivided, genuinely present attention. Not while checking their phone, fail. Not while half thinking about something else. Not while performing the appearance of listening. But actually there, actually with you. How rare was that, fail. How powerful did it feel? That is what becomes possible when a person stops leaking and starts collecting, fail. When the energy that was being sprayed in every direction finally gets gathered, focused, directed with intention, fail. It does not just change their inner experience. It changes the very fabric of how reality organizes around them. Let me go deeper into the mechanics of this, fail. Because understanding the why behind the practice makes the practice itself almost effortless, fail. Your nervous system is not just a biological mechanism for processing sensory information. It is an antenna. It is a receiver and a transmitter simultaneously, fail. Every moment of every day, your nervous system is broadcasting a frequency into the field around you, fail. And that frequency is determined not by what you think you believe, but by the actual state of your body, your emotions, your attention, your coherence, fail. When your system is fragmented, when it is processing too many inputs, managing too many social contracts, recovering from too much stimulation, the signal it sends is chaotic, incoherent, weak. And the field responds accordingly, not as punishment, simply as physics. A chaotic signal produces chaotic reflections. An incoherent transmission attracts incoherent experiences. Imagine for a moment a tuning fork. Fail. When you strike a tuning fork, it vibrates at a precise, specific frequency. That frequency is clean. It is pure. And because it is pure, fail. It has the power to cause other objects at the same frequency to begin vibrating in resonance with it. This is called sympathetic resonance, fail. And it is not just a property of metal instruments. It is a property of consciousness, of fields, of the living, vibrating system that you are, fail. When your field is coherent, when your nervous system is settled, and your attention is gathered, and your energy is flowing from a place of genuine alignment, you become like that tuning fork. You begin to call into resonance the experiences, the people, the opportunities that match your frequency, fail. Not because you are trying to attract them, but because coherence naturally draws coherence, because clarity naturally organizes clarity around it. But when you strike a tuning fork, and then immediately press your thumb against it, the vibration stops. The frequency collapses. The resonance ends, fail. This is what scattered attention does to your field. Every distraction, every unconscious scroll, every energy leak is a thumb pressed against the fork, fail. The signal does not disappear entirely, but it weakens, it blurs. And the reality that forms around a blurred signal is correspondingly blurred, fail. But when you begin to protect your energy, when you start removing what does not belong, something remarkable happens at the level of your biology. Your nervous system begins to settle. Not into numbness, not into withdrawal, into coherence. Your heart rhythm smooths. Your brain wave patterns shift, fail. The constant background noise of fight or flight, that most people have normalized as just how life feels begins to quiet. And in that quietening, fail, a different kind of intelligence comes online, an intelligence that does not think its way to answers, but feels them, knows them, fail, recognizes them the way you recognize your own face in a mirror. Instantly, without effort, without doubt. This is the intelligence that builds realities. Fail, not the frantic, anxious, calculating mind that most people are operating from. That mind is useful for certain tasks, fail. But it is not the architect of your life. The architect lives deeper, in the coherent field of your heart, in the settled wisdom of your gut. Fail in the quiet knowing that arises when the noise finally stops long enough for truth to speak. And truth, when it speaks, rarely shouts. It whispers, fail. It arrives as a feeling before it becomes a thought. It shows up as a pull toward something, or a quiet repulsion away from something, fail. And if your system is too noisy, too scattered, too overstimulated, you will miss it every single time. You will override it with logic, fail. You will talk yourself out of it with reason. You will choose what makes sense over what feels true. And you will build a life that looks right, fail, but feels hollow, a life that photographs well, but does not nourish, a life that impresses others, but slowly, quietly starves you from the inside, fail. And the tragedy of that life is not that it is painful. The tragedy is that it is almost comfortable, almost fine, almost enough. It does not hurt badly enough to demand change. It just aches quietly, persistently, fail. In that low-grade way that is easy to dismiss and easy to medicate and easy to distract yourself from, fail. Which is exactly why so many people carry it for decades without ever addressing the source. Because the source is not a crisis. It is a pattern, fail. And patterns are invisible until you learn to see them. So the invitation here is not just philosophical. It is deeply practical, fail. Protecting your energy is not a luxury. It is the single most important thing you can do for the quality of your reality, fail. And it starts not with some grand overhaul, but with the smallest, most honest examination of where your power is currently going. Start with your attention. Fail just for one day, watch where it goes. Do not judge it. Do not try to change it. Just observe, fail. Notice how many times you pick up your phone without any clear intention. Notice how many conversations you participate in that leave you feeling thinner, fail, not fuller. Notice how many commitments in your calendar exist, not because they align with who you are becoming, fail, but because saying no felt too uncomfortable at the time you said yes. Notice how much of your mental energy is spent thinking about other people's lives, fail. Other people's opinions, other people's dramas. Notice how rarely in an average day your attention rests on something that genuinely matters to you, fail. This observation alone, done honestly, can be one of the most confronting experiences of your life, fail. Because what most people discover is that the vast majority of their energy is going to things they never consciously chose, fail. Their attention has been colonized, not by force, by default. By the slow accumulation of habits, expectations, social contracts, fail, and technological seductions that filled every available space before they even had a chance to decide what they wanted there, fail. And this is where the real work begins. Not in adding new practices, not in stacking more techniques on top of an already overwhelmed system, but in removing, fail, clearing, creating space, saying no to what does not serve, so that what does serve finally has room to breathe, to grow, to become something real, fail. There is a reason every wisdom tradition on earth includes some form of withdrawal, some period of silence, solitude, simplification. The desert fathers, fail. The forest monastics, the vision quest, the hermitage, the retreat. These were not escapes from life. They were returns to life. Returns to the essential, fail. Returns to the signal beneath the noise. And while most of us are not going to move to a cave or spend 40 days in the wilderness, fail, the principle remains absolutely relevant. You need space. Your consciousness needs space. Your field needs space. Not as a one-time event, fail, but as an ongoing practice, a daily reclamation of the territory that is rightfully yours. What those traditions understood, fail. What they encoded into their practices and their rhythms of daily life, fail, was something that modern culture has systematically dismantled in the name of productivity and connectivity and growth, fail. They understood that the human being is not a machine that runs better with more input. The human being is a field that becomes more powerful with more coherence, and coherence requires space, it requires silence, it requires the regular, fail, deliberate withdrawal of attention from what is merely loud, in order to return it to what is actually real, fail. The monastery bell that rang every few hours was not just marking time, it was a technology, fail. A technology for interrupting the accumulation of scattered attention and returning the practitioner to their center, fail. A reminder built into the architecture of the day that no matter what the world demanded, the inner life required tending, fail. The inner field required cultivation, and that cultivation was not optional, it was the practice. It was the whole point. This looks different for everyone, fail. For some it means mornings without screens. For others it means drastically reducing social commitments. For some, fail. It means leaving relationships that have been draining them for years. For others, fail. It means simply learning to sit in silence for 10 minutes without reaching for something to fill the gap. Fail. The form does not matter nearly as much as the principle. The principle is this, fail. Every unit of energy you reclaim from what does not matter becomes available for what does. And what does matter, fail. That is the question that only silence can answer. Because the mind, the conditioned mind, the mind shaped by culture and advertising and social comparison, fail. That mind has a very long list of what matters, and most of it is wrong. Most of it is inherited, fail. Most of it belongs to someone else's definition of a good life that you absorbed so early and so completely that you mistook it for your own, fail. But beneath that conditioned layer, beneath the programming and the performance and the people pleasing, there is something that knows, fail. Something that has always known what your life is actually for, what your energy is actually meant to build, fail. What your attention is actually designed to create. And that something does not need more information, fail. It does not need another book or another course or another teacher. It needs room, fail. It needs you to stop filling every moment with noise long enough for its voice to become unmistakable. Fail. This is why the instruction is so simple it almost sounds too simple. Go quiet now, not forever, not as a permanent withdrawal from the world, fail. But right now, in this season, in this chapter, pull your energy back from everything that is not essential and watch what happens, fail. Watch what begins to reorganize when you stop interfering with the field. Watch what clarity emerges when you stop drowning it in distraction, fail. Watch what power returns when you stop giving it away to every person, platform, and performance that asks for it. The people who do this, fail. Who actually do this report something that sounds almost too dramatic to be real. They say reality begins to shift. Not in some vague, abstract, spiritual way. In concrete, tangible, undeniable ways. Opportunities appear that seem perfectly timed, fail. Relationships either deepen into something genuine or fall away without the drama that usually accompanies endings. Health improves. Creativity returns, fail. A sense of purpose that had been buried under years of noise suddenly surfaces with startling clarity. Synchronicities multiply. The right people show up, fail. The wrong situations dissolve. Life begins to feel less like something you are managing and more like something you are participating in, fail. Like a current you finally stopped swimming against. And the reason for this is not mystical, in the way most people think of mystical, fail. It is actually deeply logical when you understand the physics of consciousness. When your field is coherent, fail. When your energy is gathered and focused rather than scattered and depleted, you become a stronger attractor. You become a clearer signal. The quantum field, fail, which is always responding to observation, to attention, to coherent intention, begins to organize around you differently. Not because you have earned it. Fail. Not because you have become worthy, but because you have finally become available. Fail. Available to receive what was always trying to reach you, but could not get through the noise. Think of it like a radio. The station you want to hear has been broadcasting the whole time. The music has been playing. The signal has been there. But your dial was tuned to static. Fail. Not because you chose static, but because 1,000 small fail. Unconscious choices accumulated into a frequency that did not match what you were actually looking for. Protecting your energy is tuning the dial. That is all it is. But that is everything. And here is what makes the radio metaphor even more precise than it first appears. When you tune a radio, fail, you do not add anything to the signal. The signal was always there, fully formed, complete, broadcasting with perfect clarity. Fail. What you change when you tune the dial is your capacity to receive it. You align your receiver with the frequency that was already present. Fail. You remove the interference. You clear the channel, and suddenly what was always there becomes audible, becomes real, becomes yours. Fail. This is exactly what happens when you begin to protect your energy. You do not create new possibilities. Fail. You become receivable to the possibilities that have been present all along, waiting for you to clear the channel that was always meant to carry them. Fail. Now let me address something that comes up for almost everyone who enters this process, because it is important. Fail. And it is the place where most people get stuck and turn back. When you start pulling your energy back, when you start saying no, when you start going quiet, fail. The world will push back. It will. The people around you who benefited from your scattered availability will feel the shift. Fail. And they will not always respond with understanding. Some will call you selfish. Some will accuse you of changing, as if change were a betrayal. Some will simply drift away, unable to maintain a connection that was built on mutual distraction rather than mutual depth. And inside yourself, fail. The resistance will be even louder. The guilt will come. The fear of missing out will come. The anxiety of being alone with yourself, truly alone. Fail. Without the buffer of business and noise, that will come too. And it will feel for a time like you are losing something, like the world is getting smaller. Fail. Like you are becoming less. But here is the truth that lives on the other side of that discomfort. You are not becoming less. Fail. You are becoming more concentrated, more potent, more real. Like a river that has been spread across a wide, shallow plain finally finding its channel again. The volume of water has not changed, but the depth has. The force has. The direction has, and a deep, channeled river can carve through stone in ways that a shallow, scattered one never could. Feel that image in your body for a moment. Fail. Feel the difference between water spread thin across flat land, moving slowly, evaporating quickly, unable to sustain any significant current. Fail. And water gathered into a deep channel, moving with direction, with momentum, with the kind of force that reshapes landscapes over time. You are that water. Fail. The question is not whether you have enough. The question is whether you are channeled or scattered. Fail. Whether your flow has direction, or whether it is being absorbed by whatever terrain happens to be nearby. Fail. This is the paradox that protects itself from being exploited by those who are not ready for it. The path to more power looks like less activity. Fail. Less noise, less social performance, less consumption, less availability. And because it looks like less, because it does not photograph well, fail. Because it does not generate content or impress at dinner parties, most people will never choose it. They will continue to add, continue to scatter, fail, continue to leak, and they will continue to wonder why their reality feels like it is built on sand despite all their effort. But you are here. Fail. And the fact that you are here, that these words are landing somewhere inside you that recognizes them not as new information, but as remembered truth. Fail. That tells me something about where you are in your journey. You are at the threshold. The threshold where the old way of operating, the scattered way, fail. The performative way, the constantly available way, has finally exhausted itself, and something in you is ready, maybe even desperate, fail, for a different way of being. So let me offer you something practical. Not a technique, not a system, something simpler, fail. A practice of reclamation that you can begin today, right now in the next hour of your life. Pause for a moment. Take a breath. Not a performative breath. A real one. Feel your body. Feel the weight of it in whatever position you are in right now. Feel the places where tension lives. The jaw, the shoulders, fail. The belly. The places where you have been holding the world's weight without even realizing it. And as you breathe, fail. As you settle into the simple fact of your own existence, ask yourself one question. Where is my energy right now? Do not analyze the answer. Just feel it. Feel where your attention has been living today. Feel what it has been attached to. Feel the threads that connect you to conversations, concerns, obligations, fail, worries, plans, and performances that may or may not actually belong to you. Just notice them, fail. Like noticing strings tied to your fingers that you had forgotten were there. And then gently, not with force, not with drama, fail. Begin to release what is not yours. Not all at once, not permanently. Just in this moment, let the threads soften. Let the attachments loosen. Let your energy fail. Your precious, irreplaceable reality, building energy come home. Back to your center, back to your body, fail. Back to the quiet place inside you that exists beneath every role you play, and every mask you wear, and every performance you have been giving for an audience that was never going to build your life for you anyway. Fail. Feel what happens when even a fraction of your scattered energy returns to center. Feel the subtle shift in density, in presence, in aliveness. That feeling, fail. That gathered, centered, quietly powerful feeling, that is your natural state. That is what you feel like when you are not leaking, fail. That is the frequency from which reality reorganizes itself around you, and it has been available to you this entire time, fail. Hidden not behind some spiritual achievement, but behind the simple willingness to stop giving yourself away, fail. Now here is where this goes deeper than personal comfort or stress reduction, because what I am describing is not just about feeling better, fail. It is about the fundamental mechanics of how your reality is constructed moment by moment, fail. Every quantum physicist who has honestly confronted the implications of the observer effect has had to reckon with something that most of the scientific establishment still does not know what to do with, fail. The act of observation does not just measure reality, it participates in creating it. The observer and the observed are not separate, they are entangled, fail. They are co-arising. What you consistently observe, what you give your sustained, coherent attention to, does not just get noticed by reality. Fail, it gets built by reality. So what happens when your observation is scattered, fail? When your attention is split among 100 inputs that have nothing to do with the life you are trying to create, fail? What happens when the most powerful creative instrument in the known universe, your conscious awareness, fail, is being used primarily to process other people's content, other people's drama, other people's carefully curated versions of reality, fail? What happens is that you become a passive participant in someone else's creation rather than an active architect of your own. Your field of observation, fail. Instead of being focused like a laser on what matters to you, becomes diffused like a dim bulb, illuminating everything faintly and nothing fully, fail. And the reality that forms around that diffused observation is exactly what you would expect. Vague, unfocused, a life that sort of works, fail. But never quite crystallizes into anything that feels like yours. This is not a punishment. This is not the universe withholding from you. This is simply the physics of attention. Coherent observation creates coherent reality. Scattered observation creates scattered reality, fail. And the degree to which you protect your energy, the degree to which you gather your attention and direct it with intention, fail, is the degree to which you gain creative authority over the field that shapes your experience. Let that sink in. You are not a passive recipient of reality, fail. You are an active participant in its creation, and the quality of your participation is determined almost entirely by the quality of your attention, fail, not the quantity of your effort, not the intensity of your desire, the quality of your attention, its coherence, its focus, its freedom from noise. This is why going quiet works. Not because silence is magical, but because silence is the condition in which coherence becomes possible. When the noise stops, fail. When the inputs reduce, when the scattered threads of attention are gathered back to center, the field of your awareness naturally becomes more coherent, fail. More focused, more powerful. And reality, which was always responding to you, begins to respond differently. Not because you changed what you were asking for, fail, but because you changed the clarity of the asking. Think about the most transformative moments of your life, fail. The moments when something shifted so fundamentally that everything after was different from everything before. Were those moments loud? Were they busy, fail? Were they happening in the middle of a crowded room full of distractions? Almost certainly not. Almost certainly, they happened in stillness, in solitude, fail. In the quiet space between one chapter and the next. In the gap where the noise paused long enough for something real to get through, fail. Those moments were not accidents. They were the natural result of temporary coherence. Moments when, for whatever reason, fail. Your scattered energy gathered itself, and your field became clear enough to receive what was always trying to reach you. The insight, the knowing, the shift, fail. It was always there. You just could not hear it over the noise. What I am suggesting is that you do not have to wait for those moments to happen accidentally, fail. You can create the conditions for them deliberately every single day. By protecting your energy as if your reality depends on it. Because it does, fail. And this brings us to perhaps the most important distinction in this entire conversation. The difference between isolation and sovereignty. Because what I am describing is not isolation. It is not hiding, fail. It is not building walls and cutting everyone off and retreating into some lonely fortress of self-protection. That is fear wearing the costume of wisdom, fail. That is the ego using spiritual language to justify its avoidance. What I am describing is sovereignty, fail. The capacity to choose consciously and deliberately what receives your energy and what does not, fail. The ability to be fully in the world without being consumed by it. To engage deeply with what matters and disengage cleanly from what does not, fail. To love without leaking. To give without depleting. To participate without losing yourself in the participation. A sovereign being is not absent from life, fail. They are more present than most people have ever experienced. Because their presence is not diluted, fail. It is not spread thin across 1,000 shallow engagements. It is concentrated, full, available in a way that most people, scattered as they are, fail, simply cannot be. When a sovereign being speaks, you feel the weight of their words. When they listen, you feel genuinely heard, fail. When they choose to be with you, you know it is a real choice. Not an obligation or a habit or a default. This is the quality of presence that changes rooms, that shifts conversations, that alters the trajectory of relationships and projects, and even seemingly random encounters. Not through effort, fail. Through coherence. Through the gathered, focused, undiluted power of a human being who has stopped leaking and started living from their center, fail. And the beautiful thing, the thing that makes this accessible to anyone regardless of circumstance, is that sovereignty does not require perfect conditions, fail. It does not require wealth or freedom from responsibility or hours of daily meditation. It requires one thing, fail. The willingness to be honest about where your energy is going, and the courage to redirect it toward what actually matters. That honesty is the beginning, fail. That courage is the practice, and the result, which unfolds not overnight, but steadily, unmistakably, irreversibly, fail, is a reality that begins to reflect the coherence of the consciousness creating it. You will know it is working not because fireworks go off, fail, but because things start to feel cleaner, simpler, more aligned. Fail. You will notice that decisions become easier because you are no longer trying to satisfy 12 different agendas simultaneously. Fail. You will notice that your body feels different, lighter, more settled, less braced against the constant onslaught of input. Fail. You will notice that your creativity returns, not as something you have to force, but as something that flows naturally when the channel is clear. Fail. You will notice that the right things start showing up with less effort. Fail. As if the universe had been trying to deliver them all along, and finally found an address that was not buried under junk mail. And perhaps most profoundly, fail. You will notice that your relationship with yourself changes. The constant background noise of self-doubt, self-criticism, self-comparison, it begins to quiet. Fail. Not because you have convinced yourself of your worthiness through affirmation, but because in the silence, in the gathered stillness of your own presence, fail, you encounter something that needs no convincing, something that was never broken, never insufficient, never lacking. Fail. Something that was simply waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice it was there. That something is what you actually are beneath the noise. Fail. Beneath the performance, beneath the identity you have been constructing and maintaining and defending for as long as you can remember. And when you meet it, fail. When you rest in it, even briefly, you understand why protecting your energy matters so much. Because this quiet, powerful, undeniable presence, fail. This is what you have been protecting it for. Not for productivity, not for manifestation, not for any external result at all. For this, fail. For the experience of being fully, completely, unapologetically here. In your life, in your power. And from that place, everything you create, fail. Everything you touch, everything you choose to participate in, carries a different quality, a different weight, a different frequency. Fail. Not because you are trying harder, because you are finally creating from wholeness rather than from fragmentation, from coherence rather than from chaos. Fail. From the full, gathered, protected power of a consciousness that knows itself and refuses to be diluted. Fail. Let me tell you what this actually looks like in practice. Because the philosophy matters, but the embodiment is where the transformation lives. Fail. When you begin to live from this protected, coherent, gathered place, your mornings change first. Fail. You stop reaching for the phone before you have even fully arrived in your own body. Fail. You stop feeding your field someone else's reality before you have had a chance to establish your own. You create a window, even a small one, even 10 minutes. Fail. Where the only input is your own breath, your own body, your own quiet interior. And in that window you let yourself arrive. Fail. You let yourself land in the day before the day lands on you. Then your conversations change. Fail. You stop participating in exchanges that leave you feeling hollow, or agitated, or vaguely less than you were before they started. Not dramatically. Fail. Not with announcements. You simply become less available for what does not serve you. You respond more slowly. You choose more deliberately. Fail. You notice the difference between a conversation that generates energy and one that extracts it. And you begin, gently but consistently, fail, to orient toward the former and away from the latter. Then your commitments change. Fail. The obligations that you have been carrying out of guilt or habit, or the fear of disappointing someone, begin to feel heavier, more obviously misaligned. Fail. More clearly not yours. And one by one, with whatever grace the situation allows, you begin to set them down. Not all at once. Fail. Not in a dramatic declaration of self-reclamation. Just quietly, steadily returning each borrowed weight to its rightful owner and feeling each time. Fail. The subtle but unmistakable sensation of energy returning to your field. And then something larger shifts. The whole texture of your life begins to change. Fail. Not because you have done anything extraordinary, but because the accumulation of these small, consistent, sovereign choices has fundamentally altered the frequency at which you are operating. You have been tuning the dial, day by day, choice by choice, fail. And now the station is clearer. The signal is stronger. And the reality that forms around that stronger signal is correspondingly more aligned, more alive, fail, more genuinely yours. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not as instruction, but as invitation. In the coming days, practice going quiet, fail. Not as punishment, not as deprivation, as reclamation. Notice what asks for your energy, and ask whether it has earned the right to receive it, fail. Notice what fills your attention, and ask whether it serves your becoming, or simply occupies your awareness, fail. Notice the difference between the business that builds and the business that buries. And when the world pushes back, when the guilt comes, fail. When the fear of missing out whispers that you are falling behind, remember this. You cannot fall behind on a path that is uniquely yours. There is no race. There is no competition. There is only the degree to which you are present in your own life, fail. And that degree is determined almost entirely by how much of your energy is actually available to you in any given moment. Protect it. Gather it. Let it build, fail. Let the silence do what silence has always done, which is to reveal what was true all along beneath everything that was merely loud. If this reached you, fail. If something in these words touched the part of you that has been waiting for permission to stop performing and start living, then let this be that permission. Fail. You do not need anyone else to validate this choice. You do not need the world to understand. You just need to begin, quietly, deliberately, starting now. Fail. Go quiet now and watch everything change.